This is Billionaires in Boxes, an award-winning podcast and TV publicist for businesses.
Billionaires in boxes, steady hustle, no stopping. Making it happen, put words into action, and quitting is never an option. No time to be a loser, gonna live the life that you choose to. Time to make a little money and gain some influence with Phil Pelucha.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Billionaires in Boxes with me, your host, Phil Pelucha. I am joined bright and early this morning by Dave Henning on the other side of the planet. Dave, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here, my friend.
Thanks, Phil. Great to be here as well. Good to see you again. In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and show everybody how to eliminate expensive legal fees, protect and grow their small businesses. I'm really excited about that. And what if I could show you a way to pay off your credit cards and make an extra six-figure income part-time in 4 hours a week that automatically pays you over and over again every year? Would that be helpful? Most people think this is totally ridiculous. So stick around, prove me wrong. And if you're serious and not just curious, this isn't for everyone. It may not be for you. So stick around. I've got a free gift for you. And at the end, I've got a link for a free 15-minute business conversation with me.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, look, and you're right. I think a lot of people will hear, wait, 6 figures, 4 hours a week. I'm not sure I'm buying this, but I know what you do and I know how good you are at it. So I'm really kind of excited to dig into that conversation. If we could just take it back a little step, you're obviously an experienced man. You've been in the industry for a while now. Do you want to just kind of give us a bit of an idea about your background? Because it's quite colorful, isn't it? You've got some radio and some broadcast in there. You obviously got a lot within business. You now find yourself south of the border. So just give our listeners a little bit of a history of you, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely. I've been in sales for years and years. I worked at 10 different radio stations around the United States, you name it, Kansas City, New York, Boston, San Francisco. I was a DJ, talk show host, and took myself off the air to go into sales, make a little bit more money, and won a lot of sales awards doing that. Done some TV commercials, run some awards with that kind of stuff as well. And then I wrote a book and hit Amazon #1 bestseller with the book on the power of encouragement. So that's what I do. I love to encourage small business owners and help us make a difference because, we've all been through it this last season of our lives here, right?
I think what's interesting is in particular about this current market is that obviously there have been a lot of businesses who have been through turmoil. I think there are certain businesses that have grown exponentially. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try and cry poverty because we've been very successful during this period. Even more so than usual. It's kind of accelerated our growth. But I appreciate that there are a lot of businesses, depending on your industry, that hasn't been the case for. But I think it's also with the great resignation, how many people are now starting small businesses, right? We keep hearing about the great resignation all over the news. The numbers are kind of scary. Like 1 million people have left their job and have no intention of ever going back. Well, that might be 1 million new small business owners and as any small business owner listening to this will know, you're like, yeah, that the first 1 to 5 years, like every day is a school day, right? And there's stuff that you didn't even know what to expect. The biggest one for me, and I'll never forget it, right? Having come from the corporate world, I had no idea that sometimes you needed to chase invoices. I didn't know that was a thing. Right? I thought you just send someone your link, they pay you, and then it's all done and dusted. It never occurred to me that I would have to become like Dog the Bounty Hunter and start trying to hunt people down to pay their bills. This was never a thing. Now, I appreciate that there was a department who dealt with that stuff. But to be honest, I didn't even really understand what it was that they did. I just thought they created the invoices, they sent them out, and that was the end of it. And only when I became a small business was I was like, wait, I've invoiced like 50 grand. How come I've only got 20 in the bank? Like, what's going on? That was a big lesson to learn, as is the fact you've got to market yourself, as is the fact that you've got to keep doing sales and business development, even when you're oversubscribed and you're busy, so that you can avoid that roller coaster business of, I've never got any clients. What am I going to do? I'm going to do loads of business development work, win a load of customers. Right now, I'm just going to focus on those customers and I'm not going to do any business development work. Fast forward 2 months, you're sat there going, where are my customers? Like, what do I do now? So good luck to those people, but I'm glad that you are here to kind of give them that guiding hand. So typically when people do come to you, then what is it typically that they come to you for? Because most people will come with preconceptions in mind. They will have certain ideas, certain falsehoods, certain beliefs. What does that look like in your world?
Well, it's interesting you should make that point, because I found out the hard way, if you want to put it that way, that I was not paid on all the thousands of dollars worth of radio advertising that I sold. I was paid on collections. So if I didn't collect it, I didn't get my commission. So having said that, yeah, that's just the way, the nature of the beast. So
that's cheeky.
Yeah. So having said that, yeah, you're right. People are looking around all over the internet, like, how can I, there's real estate, there's Bitcoin, there's this, there's that. And yet what's the best return on the investment of your time? Who pays the most for the least amount of work? And I had a full-time job working an air shift 4 hours a day. So I'm talking from experience when it talks about making full-time money part-time. But here's why most people don't believe a subscription plan for getting legal help is real. And I can appreciate that. Some business owners think, well, if it's cheap, it can't be real, right? And you tried an online legal service advertising on Google and it didn't work. Or, you might be thinking, well, these must be paralegals, inexperienced lawyers right out of college. How reliable can that be? So it's more trustworthy to go see an attorney who's in person, sitting behind a huge oak desk. And you want to keep the same lawyer long-term, even if they only practice one area of law. So you actually think the law, and then you might actually think, oh, the law is actually fair in my particular legal issue. And the other problem is you may be assuming, and if you're like me, it's going to take way too long to get an answer, and you need help like right now.
Yeah.
And so, if there's listeners out there who are nodding their head in agreement here, I'm going to predict that you have had a legal problem with vendors or employees and have not found the answer yet. You've had people who owe you money. You've given up trying to get your money. Maybe you are stressed out just about running your business. And maybe you do a Google search and you're staring at this whole list of lawyers, scratching your head, thinking, who do I trust? I've paid lawyers before, Phil, by the hour, who did nothing, got no result, and kept adding on hours, billing me for every little paper clips, every little thing at $300, $400 an hour. It's not worth it. Years ago, before I found about my company, we actually had a family relative, an attorney who had charged us $500 to have his paralegal write a letter for us for a home improvement company where my wife got hurt in the parking lot. So there's got to be a better way. And so I'm into the better way because I'm just passionate about helping small business owners, because I are one.
Yeah. No, well, and I was not in a way, certainly, because I've found myself, thankfully, I've never found myself on the wrong side of a lawsuit, but I've certainly found myself, having to instigate a couple when things have happened. I had an intellectual property theft thing. Somebody practically cloned my business, called it the same thing, and started trying to pretend to be us in another country. That was interesting. And then for a client of mine, actually, that I was working with at the time, I was helping them with an employment dispute. Essentially, somebody in an executive position did everything they could to get fired. So because they know if they resign, they are subject to a non-compete clause for a certain period of time. So they'd already been headhunted by another business. They wanted to give that business all of those secrets. And they felt that the best way to do that was to do everything they could to get themselves fired. So that then it was like, well, you fired me, so now I'm free to go to this other company and give them all of your secrets. And that was a messy lawsuit. And again, like I remember the attorneys involved in that, pardon the expression, they were cowboys. Like they were just, they were so snaky. Like everything they did was about money. Like it wasn't about justice. It wasn't about winning the case. It wasn't about doing the best thing by the client. They would ask for extensions in mediation discussions because it would give them another month to file paperwork and say, oh, well, there's another $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 that you owe us. So yeah, I think for the people who've experienced this, I think they're going to be nodding away and listening to you intently. I think for the people who haven't experienced this, you probably should be listening in intently, because it's only when you get stung by this and you find yourself on the other side, you realize quite how expensive it is. Strange analogy, but many of our listeners are in the US. Think about health insurance. Like health insurance might seem like a ridiculous expense and something that you don't need until you find yourself in hospital with that bill mounting up by the seconds. with them charging you $100 for dinner and $5,000 for the bed and whatever it is that they're charging you for. Yeah, you bet you wish you paid that insurance now, right?
That's exactly right. And the cool thing about our service is that we actually want you to use it. I've used my service. I called my law firm down in LA and says, send me a list of how many times I've used your service. 48 times in the last 8 years alone. And I've never gotten a bill, because this is an insurance model, if you will, if we can say that.
Sure.
But, so the question is, I'm sure people are scratching their heads again and saying, how is this possible? Come on, really? Well, the company's called LegalShield. They're out of Oklahoma. They've been around for 50 years. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary next spring. It started, believe it or not, way back, I think in like 1969, when the founder was in a head-on car crash. He was a school teacher, and he was out selling insurance on the side, like a lot of school teachers do. And the issue was that the person that ran into him was liable for it. But they decided, I'm going to hire an attorney. So they sued him. He had to mortgage his house just to pay his legal bills, because you have to respond. So here's the point, Phil. Our seasoned attorneys have an average of 22 years of experience in every area of the law. They're not paralegals or recent law school graduates. We have qualified law firms, get this, in every state in the United States and every province of Canada. We just added Quebec last year. We have lawyers in every area of law. We do real estate contract review, landlord contract review. If you're buying a car, a cell phone, you get the contract review. That's included. We take care of IRS audits, employment law, speaking of which, what you just talked about.
Yeah.
My wife and I had that situation in our doctor's office, an employee. Employment law, lawsuit protection, collection letters. And our lawyers are prepaid and required to call you back within, get this, 4 hours or less to answer your questions, tell you what your rights are, what the law says, and what you can and cannot do. And that's the concept. We're similar to what Airbnb did for the hotel industry, what Uber and Lyft did, what Netflix, how they deliver movies. It's a subscription-based crowdfunding model. And as I mentioned, our law firms are prepaid a lot of money based on the state that they're in, required to provide excellent customer service. And we actually own the phone systems that check up on them to make sure they're doing their job.
Beautiful. How did you get involved in this, by the way?
Well, years ago, a friend of mine told me about it, and I thought, this sounds very intriguing. I'd been involved in another company where I was making quite a bit of money with actually these machines that kill COVID virus. But that company went upside down after the recession of 2006. So they could not get the materials to make the machine. So my friend who was with that company says, let's take a look at this company. Went to a lot of conventions, did my due diligence, got my research done, and found out, look, these guys are legit. They've paid out, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud. They've paid out over $1 billion in commissions and bonuses in the last 10 years alone. They pay their bills. They've never missed a commission payment in 50 years.
Wow. That is pretty cool. I like this. It's smart. And people can get involved, with what time they have available, which I think is the important point here. I mean, I think you probably know this about me, but we founded something called the EWCC, which is the Emerging Wealth Creation Community. And the EWCC was all about empowering people who had been either underrepresented or, so we're talking about, single parents, former convicts, people who didn't graduate high school from the established markets, right the way through to the emerging markets where there's mass unemployment, and it doesn't matter how good you are at what you do, there's no jobs available. And for those people, it can either be a full-time job or a part-time job. And the idea behind this is, if you have a few hours a day, you have an ability to make money, but you don't have a product or service to deliver. So what are you going to do? And that's where opportunities like this, I think, are incredibly powerful because, as we both know, trying to run a business is incredibly time consuming. So if you've only got 2 hours a day to commit to something, good luck to you running a business on 2 hours a day until that thing's all set up and is a well-oiled machine, right? But doing something like this, I think, is incredibly powerful for people. So if I may, I'm curious because I always like to ask these questions because I feel like it gives a clearer picture. could you give an example of somebody who's doing this? Like what's their kind of situation? How do they get involved? If I may, even like how much can they expect to earn for if they're doing 4 hours worth of 4 hours worth of work per week? I'll put my teeth in. 4 hours worth of work per week. How much can they realistically expect to earn from that?
That is a great question, Phil. Obviously, I have we are like family in this industry. Let me just say that, because as you know, in some industries, if you teach somebody else how to do your job, they will like take your information and use it against you in a corporate setting. In some case, it's just the real life.
Yeah.
However, we support each other like crazy. We're family. So to answer your question, that's a great question, because there's a lady who I know personally. Her name is Linda. She was working in a major city that you would know if I told you. She was the executive assistant for the mayor of that city,
right?
A former city where I actually used to live. You can pick one of those names that I gave you. So she went in and asked the mayor for a raise. The mayor says, "Yeah, we'll give you a raise if you'll go back to school and get your MBA and pay for it yourself." And she's thinking, so she's thinking, I don't think so. Right about that time, somebody told her about LegalShield. She signed on, became an associate, got on the team, and she only had her lunch hour to make some phone calls, either her lunch hour or in her car. She totally replaced her income within the first year or so. And so the friend of mine that I work with, she had a corporate job making about $300,000 a year. She hated it. And, she's kind of like me, psychologically unemployable.
Yeah.
And she replaced that income. She works, she sleeps in, she works when she wants to, but she's built a team. And, it's kind of like the real estate model. And let's be clear about this. A lot of companies are direct marketing companies, even car dealerships. The owners pay, the general managers pay, the sales managers pay, the salespeople are paid. In real estate, as you know, the broker gets in the United States typically gets 3%, and the real estate agent gets 3%. So everybody shares a piece of the pie. That's the concept here. And yes, people are doing it in a short order of time, and they have done everything in the world to make sure that the comp plan is current and makes sense, where people can start making money, believe it or not, right away, because we have a bonus system in place, fast start bonuses, where we don't want to go into that whole scenario, but that's kind of what's going on. But again, my focus is, look, if you've got a need with your small business or your family as well, some of the things you cited about identity theft, for example, we can help with that. That's the key. And if you're okay with that, Phil, I can share a few stories.
Yeah, man. Well, absolutely. And I think you should. I mean, that story about Linda's a great example, because, my attitude when I left the corporate world was, I wanted to earn, let me get this right. I wanted to earn more from my side hustle than from my salary position for at least 3 consecutive months. And then I would leave my job and I would focus full time on my side hustle, which is exactly what we did. I mean, that was a long time ago now. Feels about 50 years ago. It wasn't. It was only about a decade ago. It just feels about 50 years.
So you were 5 years old when you started another.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, I wish. But I think it's a great way of doing it. So did Linda end up leaving the mayor's office then? Did she go and do this on her own, or what was the plan?
Oh, of course. Yeah, she totally replaced her income just doing it on her lunch hour and in her car. By the way, we talk about work from home. We say work from phone. Our entire platform is digital. As long as you've got internet and a smartphone, everything is right on your phone, including the apps, an Android app and an iPhone app that gives you direct access to your law firm or to our licensed private investigators.
I love it. Love it. Love it. And I think it's, like you said, it seems so simple. Like if there's people sat out there that are like, well, I have time on my lunch hour. I have time. I have a couple of hours a day that I could commit to this. It's like, why would you not want to look at this? And quite frankly, as a small business owner, if you're listening to this, which the vast majority of our audience will be, business owners, people will be listening to this, insurance and things like that, especially legal insurance, is so important because you only know how painful this is when you come across an issue where you need this. But as Dave was saying earlier, how many times have we needed to chase somebody for an invoice and actually they're ignoring your emails, so something more official turning up might actually do the trick. In fact, I'll let you in a little story that a lot of people don't know. I worked, and this is pretty shocking. I worked in the world of recruitment and executive search. In fact, I owned a very successful executive search firm and sold that a number of years ago now. But the UK is notoriously a very difficult market to work in that field. And there's a whole host of reasons why, but I think they're not very well protected legally. And there's way, way, way too many recruitment agencies. Like, put it this way, there are more staffing agencies in London than there are in the United States. London, I'm not talking about the UK, I'm talking about London. There are more search firms in London than there are in the whole of the US. That tells you how competitive this market is, right? Now, what ends up happening is I end up working with some companies, and thankfully I never got stung by this, but I was working with a few businesses, and I would hear these horror stories. And I remember speaking to somebody who was, what was his position? I think he was the operations director for this business. And this business had a really, really, really bad reputation when it came to paying invoices. And I said to him, if I'm going to work with you, I'm getting paid up front. And he said, why? And I said, because I've heard the stories about your business and I'm not doing this and the other. And he laughed and he said, it's not that we try and rip people off. It's that we only pay the invoice when we receive our first legal letter. I said, well, why'd you do that? And he said, because the amount of search firms that don't have legal representation and just write it off saves us about $100,000 a year in recruitment fees.
Wow.
Yeah. So now you've heard that story. Now, they're not alone, by the way. This is not one rogue business. This is relatively common in this marketplace, right? Which is also why recruiters are the worst at paying invoices, by the way. But that's a story for another day because everyone does it to them, so they think it's normal. But my point is this. Imagine if all of those small recruitment businesses had access to this plan and could have somebody to chase those invoices. Well, not only would that company be paying out $100,000 more in invoices, it would change the way that the industry behaves and it thinks because there's more accountability to it. And quite frankly, if you're a small business, what does $100,000 do to your revenue? What does losing that $100,000 do to your revenue? Like, that might be the difference between you surviving and you thriving.
Exactly. And by the way, I want to clarify this. I have a lot of attorney friends that are not involved in LegalShield, but they're friends of mine, and I've used some of them in the past. And so this is not like a let's hate all the attorneys and tell attorney jokes kind of a thing. It's not that at all. So
what do they, out of curiosity, your friends who are attorneys, what do they think of it?
Well, some of them have actually bought services from me.
That's good.
In fact, I have a business attorney up in the Portland, Oregon area who he got fed up with the identity theft plan that he bought from a well-known TV advertiser. Mm-hmm. And when he had an incident, he called him up and they says, "Well, we'll send you a brochure on what you should do." And so he says, "I'm quitting that one. I want ID Shield because we actually have licensed private investigators do all the work for you." So. Just for example, like I say, I tell a lot of people, look, there's a lot of our members that tried the service first, and they were so impressed that they're telling their mother and their grandmother, and just talking about something about a good movie or something, and then they got into business that way. Well, I might as well get paid for sharing this information because it's so lucrative. Mm. So, one of my favorite stories is I had a Charlotte window, a custom company that their customers were all contractors and builders. One contractor owed him over $15,000, way past 90 days past due, and so he saw my plan. He bought one of our small business plans, about $90 a month. called up our law firm in Raleigh, North Carolina. They wrote a nice collection letter to this individual. And guess what? About 1 week later, on a $90 first payment, the gentleman came in, stroked the check for $15,000 and got caught up on his bill.
Wow.
They just paid their first month payment. So you think that covered his plan for like 20 years?
Yeah, something like that. Well, do you know what? And this is a situation that I think is quite close to my heart as well. So, and I don't think I've shared this on a podcast before. I was living and working in South Africa, and I think a lot of people will know that when my mum fell sick with cancer, I needed to move back to the UK. But what I think people don't know is that there was let's call it a situation. I was going to swear, but I don't want to swear. There was a situation that was very, very painful for me. So I came back to the UK, and like everybody else, you know, you have to try and get a cell phone and all this kind of stuff. So I tried to get a cell phone contract. Rejected. My credit's not good enough. And I'm like, I know I've been away for a few years, but like, surely I should have enough credit just to get a cell phone. Like, this is bizarre. So then I tried to rent an apartment, and the letting agent said, nope, you failed the credit check. So I was like, what? So I did this thing called Expedia or Xperia, something like that, where you get like your full credit report. And my credit was horrific. I had like at least 40 to 50,000 pounds worth of debt. And I'm like, what is this? Right. And then I was like, I was trying to work it all out, and I'm contacting credit card companies. So I'm speaking to like Capital One, and I'm like, hey, I owe you 20 grand. And they're like, great, you need to repay it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I have no idea who you are. Like, I didn't get a Capital One credit card. Like, what is this? And anyway, what had transpired was somebody had stolen my identity whilst I was living overseas. And because credit ratings are domestic only, nobody had even bothered to contact me to tell me. So, and what was even bizarre, weirder was whilst I'm trying to fight this, and bearing in mind, it's a hard thing to fight, right? Like, you call up a company and say, I don't owe it you, it was someone else. It sounds like when you're a child and it's like, I didn't break it, a bigger boy did, right? It's like, no, this is you owe us money, right? And I don't know what happens in the US, but at the end of every year here in the UK, for everybody who's PAYE, which is an employed member of staff, pay as you earn, you get like an end of year report sent out of you to say, here's how much tax you've contributed towards your pension and blah, 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 blah. And one arrived for me, right? One arrived for me, redirected to my address from a company I'd never worked at. Like, somebody was using my name and my national insurance number, my ID number, to work in the other end of the country. And I rang the company up and I said, listen, you know, this is my name, this is the thing. And they said, okay. I said, I don't work with you. And they were like, no, you don't. And I was like, so why have you sent me this? And they were like, well, you left a month or so ago. So it was, and I was like, no, I never left. Like, I never came. So I never arrived to leave. And I explained, and somebody apparently had used my ID number and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, long story short, let me tell you what happened. I had to go insolvent. I couldn't convince them that it wasn't me. They were like, some companies just said, okay, fine, and wrote it off. But I still ended up with about 18 to 20,000 pounds worth of debt. So like $25,000-$30,000 worth of debt. It was nothing to do with me. So I ended up having to write it off. And the whole thing got taken care of by some government scheme kind of thing that was all clear within 3 years or something like that. I don't know. But I had to make monthly contributions towards that. And they're about $500 a month, like $500 a month for 3 years. And then I got a normal credit rating again that was now back to square one, and I had to rebuild all over again. Now, if I'd have had a plan like this, I could have gone and got some support for the identity theft, but nobody even wanted to touch it. Like, the police didn't want to touch it. It's a civil matter. They're not interested. Lawyers didn't want to touch it because they're like, well, just deal with the companies directly. It's a pain. That's all we can do. You know, the only people who would talk to me at all, like, I would go to an attorney, I would say, what do I do? And they go, just go insolvent. Like, it's too much of a mess at this point. Just go insolvent. It'll be done in 5 minutes, and then blah, 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 blah. Now, I'm not sharing that story to scare anybody. I am sharing it because that's how easily it happens. Like, I still to this day don't have a clue how that person got my ID number. They have my ID number and my name. I don't know how that happened. I really don't. But they like to kind of give you an idea, they were allowed to do credit cards, mobile phones, holidays, bank accounts, and bank loans. Like, so these are going to like fully established. I'm not talking about fintech here. I'm talking about fully established British high street banks for the past 200 years allowed someone to open an account and gave them £5,000 to £10,000 loans in my name, and then took no responsibility for it whatsoever. I'm not going to name anybody because I might get myself in trouble, Lloyd's TSB. But they were shocking. They had no interest in helping me whatsoever. None. They were like, well, look, the money's owed in your name, pay it. I was like, but you've given a loan to someone using my name fraudulently. That's not our problem. It's your name. That was their attitude.
And that's exactly why I am so passionate about what I do, because equal justice under law only counts if you can, you only get as much justice as you can pay for.
Yeah, justice isn't free.
As you can afford. And that's the problem. People can't afford justice. Speaking of which, I'll tell you this story. A San Francisco police officer, we also do employee benefits. We have a whole division for employees. San Francisco police officer gets an alert on his ID Shield app that says, are you buying a car in San Diego? No, I'm not. He called his private investigator. They looked into it. They actually tracked down the dealership where these people were and called up the dealership and said, are those people still there? They said, yes. He said, stall them. He calls up the San Diego Police Department, and within 30 minutes of this member of ours in San Francisco getting an alert, hey, somebody's trying to buy a car in your name, the couple was arrested in the parking lot of the car dealership. I mean, are you kidding me? My friend Jimmy in Louisiana, who's been working with school systems all over the state of Louisiana for years and years, providing employee benefits, he gets a call on Thanksgiving Day from his accountant who says, hey, you know that I tried to file your tax return electronically, but somebody else already filed your tax return, wanting to get your refund. Oh. And so he turned it over to our ID Shield investigators, and they walked him through how to connect with the IRS and how to protect himself from that never happening again. My wife had a similar situation where she had lost her wallet years and years ago, and her Social Security number showed up in Georgia or somewhere else, another state. Wow! And so we went through the same process where the investigators tracked down a person, an individual, female, and called up the local authorities, and they went and arrested this person. Here's the problem. I know you didn't want to freak people out, but the fact is, there's a huge hacking is a huge business that's called the dark web, and our information, thanks to Facebook and Google, and who pay to get all of our information is all over the place. And I'm not knocking those. I'm not not knocking that, but I'm just saying that we actually have a reputation management when you're all over with your identity on, the big players, LinkedIn or whatever. We have reputation management. What if somebody badmouths you, your reputation on the internet? We take care of that kind of stuff.
Well, do you know what? It's funny you should mention that. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm some master criminal, because I'm certainly not. But being curious about technology, I went on the dark web on several occasions and had a bit of a look around. And one of the things I remember happening was somebody sent me a link and said, oh, here's a marketplace on there, because they don't have like Google. They have to have these really long websites, and you have to use a special browser. So went on it, typed it in, and my wife and I were just sat looking through this marketplace, like a version of Amazon almost. Yep. And we're looking through it, and you can buy IDs. And I don't mean like fake IDs. I mean, it's like middle-aged man with credit score of this, credit card number here, social security number here. And you can literally just buy this stuff like it's just online. So when you think, okay, Facebook's got my stuff, but they're just going to use it to advertise to me. And I'm not picking on Facebook here, because who knows? But one breach, and that's out there. So I remember in the UK a few years ago, there was a telephone service provider who were hacked, and they lost 1 million customers' details, customers' bank details, addresses, date of births, even the security password that you're asked when entering your account. Now, think about it. How often do we reuse that same security password over and over again? What's your mother's maiden name? Well, my bank will ask me that. My insurance company will ask me that. It's dangerous. If somebody gets those answers, you're in big trouble. And quite frankly, it's not as difficult as you think. People aren't, looking at keystrokes on your computer anymore to see what you're typing in. They're just hacking the company that already have all the details and then selling the files onto somebody else.
And then there's ransomware, where big companies are having to shell out money to get the key to all their computers in their entire office back.
Do you know what happens with domains as well? Companies buy out domains and then that are very similar to yours, and then start putting defamatory stuff on there and basically contact you and say, send us $10,000, we'll give you the domain.
Exactly.
Painful.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff out there that people need to protect themselves from. So Dave, before we wrap up, how do people get in touch with you? Because there's two sides of this, isn't there? There's the people who are listening to this thinking, okay, guys, you've scared the shit out of me enough now. Like I need some protection. What do I do with that? How do they get in touch? And then also people that are listening going, well, actually, I want to be like Linda. I want to replace my income. I've got a couple of hours a day I can commit to this. I want to make some money. How do they get involved? What does that situation look like?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to davehenningonline.com. It goes to my Calendly page, and I'll be glad to do a free 15-minute call, small business call, and answer all your questions, even if you think that I'm crazy telling you about the four-hour work week. And just be aware. Let me make it clear real quick, Phil, is that we're talking about under $1 a day for your entire family plan, including children up to age 26 if they're living at home for the family plan. The identity theft plan to monitor all three credit bureaus is, basically under total combined is under like $70 a month, something like that, to have your entire family protected, including personal lawsuit protection is built into the family plan. And then the small business plans, there's options there. There's, small, medium, and large, depending on your need as a small business owner. And so I can answer all your questions. I have 7 more personal stories that I've used for speeding tickets, for a hotel dispute where I got a refund immediately with a demand letter that didn't cost me a penny. I've saved literally thousands of dollars personally. I've added up. I could tell you stories. We don't have time today, but I will share those with anybody that wants to talk to me. DaveHenningOnline.com. Let's talk. And talk is free, and I'd be glad to share with you. I've been a small business coach for years as well, and I tie that into what I do now with this company because I love coaching and helping people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll second that message. If you check out the show notes below, there'll be a link to book in a call with Dave there on his Calendly. Definitely book in and go and have that conversation. As he said, it's a very generous free gift. I know this man is very busy, so to be giving away 15 minutes of his time for free for that conversation is definitely worth having. And I mean, look, it could make you thousands. It could save you thousands. It seems like a pretty good trade. 15 minutes for thousands of dollars. I mean, it's pretty smart.
Phil, can I just say this, man? I really appreciated. I don't know if your listeners know we met some time ago on my podcast, and I just want to thank you for having me here, Phil. I'm a big fan of your show and what you're doing. You've created an amazing coaching and training company that actually builds meaningful relationships and gets results. And I'm all about the relationships part of that. So I really appreciate you, Phil, investing some time with me this morning and with your audience today. Did you have any other questions you wanted to think of before we wrap it up?
It's a good question. I mean, how quickly can kind of people get involved, both in terms of coverage and also, if they want to sign up and start selling this? What you mentioned about quick bonuses earlier, and I appreciate you don't want to go into that in too much detail, but as a ballpark figure, are we talking 30 days to get signed up coverage? Are we talking an hour? Are we talking we can start selling this tomorrow? Like what does this look like?
I do a free webinar that explains everything in about 30 minutes every weeknight. And if somebody signed up, just for example, tonight, their membership would be active immediately. It's a digital membership kit that's sent to them by email. And they could be a member tonight, and they can also become an associate tonight and start making money literally this week, direct deposit, overnight pay. So
beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Dave, I always enjoy spending time with you, brother. Thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate you being here. I'm definitely encourage people to go to the show notes below and book in that call with you and come and have that conversation. Wishing you every success, my friend. I know what you do and I know how passionate you are about it. I know how many people it helps. So I'm also a big believer in whether you're talking about God or the universe or energy or whatever, life tends to put information in front of people when they need to hear it. So if you're stuck around to the end of this podcast listening to this, there's probably a reason. So get yourself some protection, get yourself a second source of income, have that conversation with Dave. And I'm off to go and make myself a cup of tea, Dave. What's the rest of your day look like?
Yes, I'm polishing off an entire pot of coffee. So it's early here.
That sounds
like work to do.
I was going to say, it sounds like a good start to the day, my friend. Right. You take care of yourself. Thank you so much for being here. Lots of love to our listeners. We'll see you all again real soon.
You are listening to a Top 100 podcast by Billionaires in Boxes.
Now it's time to take the throne, time to levitate, help you level up, wanna see your growth accelerate. Yeah. If that's what you want, making money while you in your box of shorts, feel like nothing and nobody is stopping you, even when they said it was impossible. No need for hesitation. Phil P, yeah, that's your man. Go from the best kept secret to the go-to brand. Let's go. Hey, billionaires in boxes. Hey, billionaires in boxes. Hey, time to grow, make the world know all about ya. Hey, billionaires in boxes. Let's go.